A pair of Nike Tiempo Legends bought in 2019 was kangaroo leather. The same boot bought in 2026 is synthetic. The name on the box did not change. The price did not drop. By the end of this video, you will know the 5 other boots that pulled the same trick and the 3 boot makers who refused to. Boot number 1. The Nike Tiempo Legend. Introduced in 1994, for nearly 3 decades, the Tiempo was Nike's leather boot. Kangaroo leather upper, the softest, thinnest, most form-fitting hide in football. The boot players chose when they wanted nothing between their foot and the ball. The Tiempo was not the flashy boot, it was the serious one. That changed. Kangaroo leather came under legal and public pressure. Nike divested its only kangaroo leather supplier in 2021. In March 2023, Nike announced it would stop making any product with kangaroo leather that year. The Tiempo Legend Elite relaunched with what Nike calls Fly Touch Plus, a proprietary synthetic the brand markets as engineered leather. The marketing says it performs better than the kangaroo skin it replaced. The reviews from 2024, 2025, and 2026 describe a different boot, a firmer touch, a break-in that never fully softens the way K-leather did. Upper creasing at the flex point, a material that does not mold to the foot because synthetic does not mold. It holds a shape, leather takes yours. The boot is still called the Legend. It is still positioned as the premium leather feel option. The Tiempo Legend Elite still retails around $240 to $260. The price did not move down to reflect a synthetic upper. The buyer in 2026 is paying the kangaroo leather price for a synthetic boot, and the box does not tell him the material changed. The name stayed, the leather left. The price held. Boot number 2, the Adidas Predator. Introduced in 1994, based on a concept from former Liverpool player Craig Johnston, the original Predator was a leather boot with rubber strips fused to the strike zone, fold-over tongue, rubber fins for swerve and grip on the ball. For a generation, it was the boot of playmakers and dead ball specialists. Beckham wore it, Zidane wore it. It was leather, and it was built to put spin on a ball. The leather went first. By 2012, the Predator LZ had moved to a synthetic upper. The fold-over tongue disappeared. Then, in May 2015, Adidas discontinued the Predator entirely and replaced it with the Ace. The boot was gone for 2 years. It came back in late 2017 as the Predator 18 Plus, laceless, a prime knit upper. The rubber control fins were now a printed grip layer Adidas calls control skin, molded into the synthetic surface rather than fused leather elements. Every version since, the 19, the 20 with its rubber spikes, the Freak, the current line, is a synthetic knit boot with a printed control texture. Reviews document the knit stretching out of shape across a season, the printed control elements wearing smooth, the structured feel that defined the name softening within months. Knit does not hold its form the way leather does. It was never going to. Elite Predators retail north of $250. The buyer paying that believes he is buying the control boot his older brother strapped on in the 2000s. He is buying a synthetic knit boot with a printed surface and the same name on it. Same name, different boot. Boot number 3, the Puma King. Introduced in the late 1960s, the King is one of the oldest names in the sport. Pelé wore the King, Cruyff wore the King, Maradona wore the King. It was a kangaroo leather boot with a fold-over tongue, and for decades, it was the boot of players who valued touch and tradition over technology. Puma kept the name. Puma did not keep the boot at the center of the lineup. In March 2023, the same month as Nike, Puma announced the King would move away from kangaroo leather to a synthetic the brand calls K-Better. The modern football range is built around synthetic speed boots. The King became a heritage product, a throwback line maintained for nostalgia while the technology investment goes elsewhere. There is still a premium leather King produced for purists. There is also a mass-tier king built on synthetic and budget construction at the price points most buyers actually shop. The buyer who walks in asking for the king is sold whatever sits on the shelf, and the boot on the shelf is frequently not the leather heritage build the name was earned on. The legend is real. The boot most people buy under that legend is not the same boot. Before we continue, you need three things: the materials and the construction that decide which boots survive a season and which do not. Kangaroo leather, K leather, the thinnest, softest natural upper in football. It molds to the foot, it thins where it flexes. It gives a one-to-one touch that synthetics approximate and never match. It is being removed from the sport. Nike, Adidas, Puma, New Balance, Asics, and Diadora have all gone kangaroo-free. California bans the sale of kangaroo leather products outright. Boots that still contain it cannot legally ship there. When a heritage leather boot loses its leather, it loses the thing the name was built on. Synthetic knit, a woven textile upper. Light, cheap to produce, breathable. It does not mold to the foot. It stretches under load and does not return to shape. A knit upper that fits in week 1 is loose by month 3. The flex point is where it fails. This is not a defect, this is the material. Sole plate construction. The sole plate is where a boot lives or dies. A molded sole plate with the upper stitched or riveted to it lasts. A sole plate glued to a synthetic upper with adhesive alone separates. When you see the upper peeling away from the sole plate at the toe, that is a bonded boot reaching the end of a lifespan measured in months. The test is the flex point and the bond line. We come back to it. The pattern is one pattern. Every boot named so far carried a heritage built on leather. Every one has had that leather replaced, or that heritage build pushed to a niche the marketing no longer serves. The price did not drop to reflect any of it. The buyer is paying the leather era's price for the synthetic era's boot. Subscribe. No boot brand sponsors this channel. No deal influences these rankings. Materials and construction. That is the entire framework. Boot number 4. Umbro. Founded in 1924 in Wilmslow, England, by brothers Harold and Wallace Humphreys. Based in Manchester, Umbro is one of the oldest football names that exists. The Speciale was its boot, a leather boot beloved by a particular kind of player who wanted a clean, no-technology boot that did one thing well. England wore Umbro. For most of a century, Umbro was a serious football company. The ownership trail tells the rest. Nike acquired Umbro in 2008 for roughly $576 million. 4 years later, in 2012, Nike sold Umbro to Iconics Brand Group, a brand licensing company, for $225 million. Nike paid $500 million for it and sold it for less than half that, because Umbro was not a manufacturing asset to Nike. It was a logo. Under licensing ownership, a brand is no longer a maker with a heritage to protect. It is a name printed on whatever product a licensee orders. The Elite Speciale, the boot that earned the name, effectively left top-level football. What carries the Umbro Double Diamond in 2026 is a fashion and mass retail lineup. The construction discipline that built the Speciale is not part of the transaction when a brand becomes a license. A buyer reaching for Umbro in 2026 is reaching for the memory of a Manchester football company. The company that monetizes the name today is in the licensing business. Boot number 5, the Academy tier. This one is not a brand. It is a trap built into every brand, and it is the most expensive mistake a buyer makes because it feels like the safe choice. Walk into any store. The Mercurial is there, the Predator is there, the Tiempo is there. The same silhouette the professional wears in the same colorway on a wall at a price that looks reasonable. $60, $80. The buyer thinks he is buying the pro's boot at a discount. He is not. He is buying the takedown. Every flagship boot exists in tiers. Elite at the top is the boot the professional actually wears. Below it sits Pro, then Academy, then Club, then a base replica. The names change by brand, the system does not. As you move down the tiers, the upper drops from the flagship material to a basic synthetic. The sole plate drops from the engineered plate to a stiff molded one. The construction drops from stitched and bonded to glued. The boot keeps the name and the look of the flagship and shares almost none of its build. Reviews of the Academy and Club tiers document the same failure. Sole plates that crack because the plastic is cheaper and stiffer. Uppers that crease and split at the flex point within weeks. Bonded toes that peel because there is no stitching holding the upper to the plate. A boot that looks like a $280 Mercurial and falls apart like the $70 boot it actually is. The brand does not explain the tier system at the point of sale. The buyer sees the name and the silhouette and assumes the build follows. It does not. The replica tier is the boot you think you are buying. It is never the boot in the box. Boot number 6. The Nike Mercurial Superfly, Elite tier. This one is different. The Mercurial is not a heritage leather boot that lost its leather. It is the speed boot, the flagship, and it is on this list for one reason: durability per dollar. The Superfly Elite retails around $280 and climbs higher for special editions. At that price, the buyer expects the boot to survive. The reviews from 2024, 2025, and 2026 document the opposite at a rate no $280 product should. Mid uppers blowing out at the seams within a season of competitive use. Sole plates cracking. The composite plates snapping under normal stress. A boot engineered to shave grams, sold at a flagship price with a lifespan a serious player measures in a single season. There is an argument that a pure speed boot is a consumable. That argument does not survive the price. A consumable does not cost $280. The buyer at that price is paying flagship money for a boot built to be replaced, and the boot does not tell him that at the point of sale. Flagship price, single season build. The math does not work for anyone paying for it themselves. 6 boots, 5 names, and 1 tier, carrying a reputation the current product does not earn. But this video is not about what to avoid. It is about what still works. 3 boot makers who did not chase the synthetic arms race. Same leather, same factory, same discipline. Trust boot number 1. The Mizuno Morelia 2 made in Japan. The Morelia line has been in production since 1985. The Made in Japan version is by reputation among players who care about leather, the finest mass-produced football boot still being built. Premium kangaroo leather upper, handcrafted in Japan, lasted for 24 hours rather than the standard 20 minutes for a better fitting shape. While the rest of the market fled to synthetic, Mizuno kept making the same leather boot in the same place to the same standard for 40 years. 2 details matter. First, the sole plate is attached to the upper with rivets, a once common feature, now rare. Separation at the sole plate is usually the beginning of the end for a boot. The rivets make it far less likely. Second, the Morelia is now one of the last mainstream boots still built with genuine kangaroo leather. It carries the same California sale restriction the old Copa Mundial does. When reviewers compare it to the Copa, they note the Morelia holds its shape where the Copa can overstretch with age. The leather is that good. It is not cheap. The Made in Japan Morelia runs roughly $280 to $350, comparable to the synthetic flagships, and in some cases, above them. But it is a real leather boot, riveted, handmade, that outlasts the knit boots by seasons rather than months. The cheaper Morelias you will see are takedown models made outside Japan. For the boot the name was built on, the words on it must read, "Made in Japan." This is what a boot maker looks like when it chooses continuity over the marketing cycle. Trust boot number 2. The Adidas Copa Mundial. Released in 1979, made in Scheinfeld, Germany at the only Adidas-owned production facility, where it has been built for over 4 decades. The best-selling football boot of all time. Kangaroo leather upper, fold-over tongue, a construction Adidas left essentially alone while the rest of its range was relaunched in synthetic every 2 years. The buyer needs the current context because it is changing as we speak. In 2025, Adidas confirmed it is ending kangaroo leather across the company, the last of the major brands to do so. The K-Leather Copa Mundial is now being sold as a last-of-its-kind item. It will likely continue as a leather boot, but the specific kangaroo leather build that defined it for 45 years is ending. The buyer should confirm the upper material at purchase and understand that the original form Copa is on its way out, not because Adidas cheapened it, but because the entire industry is leaving the material behind. What has not changed is the rest. The German factory, the unchanged silhouette, the heritage build, and the price. The Copa Mundial retails around $130 to $150, roughly half the price of an elite Mercurial or Predator, for a German-made leather boot that has outlived every speed boot meant to replace it. If you want the heritage leather Copa in its original form, 2026 may be the last clean window to buy it. Same factory, same construction, 45 years. One material change, forced on the whole sport at once. Trust boot number 3, the New Balance 442, the leather one. This is the accessible pick, and it comes with one instruction: buy the right model. New Balance sells the 442 in 2 builds. The 442 Elite, the flagship, uses a synthetic upper. The boot that earns this spot is the leather 442, the V2 Pro and Team models, a real leather upper at a price that does not assume the buyer is a professional. Ask for the leather 442, not the Elite, the same way the 1880 buyer has to ask for the right Loke. The leather 442 is a clean leather boot in a market that pushed almost entirely to synthetic. A structured sole plate, a touch that does not require a flagship price to access. The reviews from players who buy their own boots are consistent. It feels the way a leather boot is supposed to feel. It lasts longer than the synthetic boots in its price range, and it does not pretend to be a flagship to justify a flagship price. The leather 442 sits in the value tier, well under the elite synthetics. New Balance went kangaroo-free, so this is calf-grade leather, not K-leather, which means it ships anywhere, including California. For a buyer who wants the leather touch without the premium of a made-in-Japan Morelia, the leather 442 is the answer. Real leather, fair price, built to last more than a season. The 442 is what the rest of the market stopped making. New Balance still makes it. You just have to pick the leather one. 3 boots that earn their price, 6 that do not in 2026. If you own any football boot, do the test. It takes 3 seconds. Flex the upper at the ball of the foot. If it folds soft and creases like skin, it is leather, and it will mold to your foot and last. If it resists, holds a stiff shape, and springs back, it is synthetic, and it will stretch out and fail at that flex point. Look at the toe, where the upper meets the sole plate. If you see stitching or rivets binding them, the boot is built to hold. If you see only a glue line and the upper is already lifting at the edge, the boot is bonded, and the bond is the lifespan. 3 seconds. You will know whether the boot is the one the name was built on or the one the marketing department kept the name for. Drop the boot you play in and the year you bought it in the comments. The boots that mattered before 2020 are not always the boots that matter now. The leather era is ending. 3 boot makers kept building leather boots anyway. The rest kept the name and changed everything behind it. This channel follows the materials, not the marketing. Subscribe.